Now YouTubers, part 2. Now as you can see, we have an earth here, an earth strap, so obviously I have to take that off. We have the gearbox mounts at the front, there's one also at the back, and as you can see we've got the actual clutch cylinder up here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to remove the engine mounts, the earth, and a couple of bolts from round here, from the gearbox, just from around here, but obviously just can't see there. It's quite difficult for me to show all this because I just can't get the right angles, but there's a couple of bolts just inside there that obviously go around with the gearbox. So we're going to whip all these off and crack on with this. 12mm. These are little things you need to remember. You took them off to put them back on, because otherwise the car might not start. Just see it there. The car might not start and stuff like that. So just remember all these little earths. They are kind of important. It's a 14mm. Now there's two more. You're not going to be able to see them, but well, you can see that one. There's two more inside there, two more bolts. And hopefully get them without having to take the big cross member off. Tight. Ratchet spanners, you gotta love them. Now for the top one. Don't know if I'm going to get this one as easy. Now, as you can see, it comes off. So we've got obviously the top engine mounts, the top gearbox mount still on, and the back mount still on. We're going to take the other back mount off now. I can't get the angles, but as you can see, it's in there. It's very similar to the one I've just taken off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it off, and then I'll show you once it's off. I can't get the camera in there and do it at the same time, unfortunately, but it's just in there. Now YouTubers, the only way I can think of doing this is kind of pointing to the bits, show you what I'm going to take off, then take them off, and then point to a few more bits, because there's just no room. Obviously, as you can see, right down here is another earth strap, so we're going to have to take that off. And as you can see, we've got a clip here, and also we've got to take right down here. You might be able to see, you can see my fingers. Let me see if I can get it on camera. Oh, here we go. Right there. No, you can't really see. Where my fingers are anyway, is there's two clips for the gear linkages, and that will completely take the gear linkages off then. So I'm going to do that, turn the camera back on, and point to a few more bits. Now, like I said, YouTubers, I'm struggling in showing you because there's just no room. But basically what I've done is I've taken off the two bolts for this. This is the mass cylinder for the clutch, so they're now off. I've disconnected where it goes on the gearbox too. Again, you're not going to be able to see, but where my hand is, you can see my hand on camera? No. Anyway, down there, you just see it moving there. There was a little bolt there, 14mm. 12mm bolt for the other earth strap. Couple of clips to hold all the wires on, so they've all been taken off. The plug for the speedo cable, so that's off, that's there. It's just really now, there's a couple of bolts to hold on the start motor, which is here. There's a couple of bolts inside there under the engine, which you just can't see on camera. That's for the gearbox. And the two clips on the, if I can show you now. No. The two clips right down where my finger is, right down there on the gear linkages, I just cannot move them. And they basically look like this fella. A bigger version of this. They're just a clip that slides down, but they're just welded solid. There is 2 bolts on the actual whole bracket which I can get from underneath. So I'm going to take off them 2 brackets, the 2 bolts for the bracket, and just disconnect the whole thing that way. And then literally, so there's maybe 2 or 3 bolts left for the actual gearbox. Then there's this gearbox mount. And that's it. Gearbox is out. Hope this is coming across okay. There's the gearbox mount. Look. 1, 2 bolts there, 2 bolts far side, big bolt that goes through it. We're getting there. Now YouTubers, what I'm going to do is the bolts I took off the gearbox, when the gearbox on the ground, I'm going to show you where they were. But as you can see here now, that's the brake, that's the gear linkage cables. And you can't quite see the bolts, but just below where my finger is there's 2 bolts. You'll see if you're doing the car, and that's the 2 bolts to take off the whole mounting bracket, which will release the gear linkage cables. It saves me having to undo. Actually, sorry, there's 3 bolts. There's 3 14mm, they look like. 3 12mm bolts, and that whole bracket will come off, which is good. Now YouTubers, I'm ready to take off this engine mount. Sorry, the gearbox mount, I don't want to keep calling it an engine mount. Now, there's a few ways of doing this. You can put crossbars across the top to support the engine, you can have special ones underneath. A few different ways. I'm going to show you a way where, if you haven't got all them kind of tools that, you know, if you don't really do it a lot, you won't really have. I'm going to show you the way of doing it. I'm going to do this as if it was on the floor, you could say. So basically what I've got a jack with a big lump of square wood. I'm going to put that underneath the sump, so I'm going to support the engine and the gearbox with that. Then literally take off this engine mount and then just let the gearbox come from underneath. You'll see when I'm doing it. It's just a way of doing it if you haven't got, you know, all special cross braces and stuff like that. So now basically you can see the jack is underneath supporting everything at the minute, and what I'm going to do here is, if you can see that, get this as close as I can. Now you can see the engine mount, gearbox mount, the gearbox mount here. There's a couple of ways of doing it. You can either take out the big bolt through it, but sometimes, or I'm saying most of the times, the gearbox is bolted on like a frame, and you really need to take that off, because when the gearbox drops, sometimes it hits the body, hits the leg, and you can't move it. So not only do you have to take off the actual main mount, you also have to take off the actual mounting bracket that goes onto the gearbox. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 14mm bolts holding the bracket on, and there's obviously 1 bolt holding the mount to the bracket. You're going to have to kind of take off both of them. So I'm going to take off the big bolt first, which is a 14mm, I'd say. Crack it first. Oh, it's tight. That's scary tight. That feels... okay, it's alright. That feels like it's about to break. Bolt through it seems quite tight. We kind of need to take that off. The right weight might help. No, that's not going to work. Right, our bolt's stuck in there, which is annoying because we need it off. The jack, thinking about it, I might have put a bit too much pressure on the jack, so I'm just going to release the jack a little bit. That might work. No. Great. There must be some sort of pressure on this, and normally you can't hit bolts. But this bolt has a coned end on it, I'll show you, so I can actually hit this without doing any damage. Problem is now the bolt is jammed between the plates. So that's not going anywhere for the minute. I'm going to have to take off the 4 bolts that hold on the mounting bracket now. 4 14s. Now take this off. And like I said, with that bolt, look, you see there's a big cone on the end of it, so you couldn't do any damage by hitting it with a hammer. And this is the bracket that I was telling you normally have to take off, because if you don't, what happens is this can hit the leg of the car as the gearbox is going down and you've got no movement. So, this gearbox is more or less out. Now YouTubers, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to go from the passenger side wheel. Obviously the car's more or less on the floor. I've got this big cushion, which you can't really see, but there's a big huge cushion which you can see there. I'm going to come from inside here. As we can see, the gearbox there. I'm going to put the cushion on the floor and put my legs between the disc, and I'm going to very gently pull out the gearbox. I can do it on this car, you can't do this on every car. So this is the reason why I'm showing you on this particular car. If you're on a driveway or something, this is one of the ways of doing it. Now you have to be careful. I've lowered the car so it's as low as it can be, and I'm just, oh, you can't see, lift up a bit more, here we go. You can see the gearbox here where my hand is, and I'm just going to literally leave it out, kind of support it, and let it just kind of rest on the cushion. Won't do any damage, and everything else is being supported by everything else. So now this is the time you just want to also double check to make sure you've got all your wires off, all your clips off, because what will happen is, if you haven't and something gets caught, you can break something, a wire can snap, a clip can break, pipes can bend. You can do an awful lot of damage very, very quickly. So you want to make sure everything's good. Now, this is very important. This is for your clutch. I want to keep that out of the way. As you can see, well, hopefully you can see, that dropped out very easy. It didn't make any bangs. It went on the cushion, sorted. Like a job in the high street. And one gearbox. You just smell the clutch in that. Ah, nothing like a clutch smell in the night. So, as we can see, that's the gearbox. Now, the 2 bolts are just these were the 2 top bolts I was talking about, one here and one there. This is the starter motor bolts. So just them 2 top bolts, they were 17mm, but like I said, you couldn't see them inside the car. So 17mm, and these were then the 3 bolts, 1, 2, 3, 12mm bolts that held in the gear linkages. 1, 2, 3, and now hopefully I can grab them, and you can see, no, still can't. They're still wedged in there. As you can see, a big hole. Obviously that's the clutch, pressure plate. So that's going to be part 3. So I hope this helped. Obviously being on your own, but not so much even being on your own, but doing that and trying to film and not get in the way is very difficult. So hopefully I've explained where all the parts and nuts and bolts go. It is simple enough. Once, if you just follow it, and once you're looking at the car, you will see what I'm talking about. So this is going to be part 2. Obviously part 3 we're going to be looking at taking out the clutch, lining it up, putting it back in, banging the gearbox back in. So we're nearly there, halfway there. Hope it helps. Thumbs up and subscribe, and don't forget, get your hands dirty. See you for the next one.